So, if you joined us last week, you got part one of a prayer talk, And today is kind of like a part two, but you don't need to have been at part one, but if you'd like to find that, you can find that online. But I was thinking about it as a new mama and thinking about prayer and what, in fact, could support a parent praying for a lifetime for their babe, or a family praying for their babe. Because when it comes to babies and your children, right, you hold the highest. You want to be able to support them with the very, very, very highest consciousness that you possibly could. And it would be nice, wouldn't it, if this was how we wanted to support everyone on the planet, right? And in Unity, we take a look at that. And, we don't just let that be an idea. We let it be something that becomes a practice. We take how we treat our loved ones, the ones closest to us, the ones that we want to give the most to, and we say, okay, if that's how I feel about my beloved, and we are all one, how can I transform my practice so that I can also show up consciously for the rest of the world, for all beings, all beloveds on the planet, even, and sometimes especially those that I don't call my own, yeah? So, I was thinking as I left the house this morning that it makes sense to first make this statement about unity and God. In unity, we believe that God does not exist within any lines or boundaries. God is not contained within any boundaries whatsoever. And that's an important concept to start this lesson with, to know that God is something that is beyond definition. You could think of God as the word love, as word itself, but we practice taking God out of the confinements that the human psyche might leave God in. So we practice not humanizing God, but kind of activating the divinity of ourselves. So elevating our consciousness, elevating our actions, elevating our prayers, our behaviors, our meditations, whatever it is, to be more God-like, whatever your God concept is. Not to confine God and to constrict God and to make God so particular or petty that it becomes like a confined human being that has issues and needs therapy. Right? Because that can be sometimes the God of our teaching, a God that's very judgmental, a God that confines, a God that restricts, a God that's watching, a little bit like a Santa Claus God, keeping a list. And if you this, then you will be blessed. If you that, then this will happen. And that leads to, I would say, an experience that really can kind of sometimes damage the psyche when bad things happen, when what the human condition calls bad things happen. We think we are out of favor with God, and we start to abuse ourselves and think that there's something that we've done, rather than opening up in prayer and meditation to a practice of asking for wisdom, asking for guidance, asking for groundedness, asking to feel the love that is always and everywhere present in this moment, asking to expand our capacity to know what it is to be a human being on the planet, evolving, expanding, and learning its divinity. So, what as a mama and as a minister and as a woman and as a girl on the planet do I think is foundational to prayer? Last week, we talked about how to hold someone in prayer, like what you do in prayer. Like if someone says, hold me in prayer, what do you do? This week, we're going to talk about beliefs. The underlying beliefs that activate a conscious prayer life, and how your beliefs can empower a greater experience of your prayer life. I think there are three things that are fundamental to our prayer practice when it comes to beliefs. Knowing that we are born blessed is number one. Knowing that we are born blessed. Knowing that we are whole and good. And I put those together. Knowing that we are whole and good is number two. And by good, I don't mean good, bad, good. By good, I mean good with a capital G, one that has no opposite. You know how tears can be thought of as bad tears, good tears, happy tears, sad tears, but then there's just tears that are like the fullness of emotion, the fullness of activity moving through you that just goes, I'm alive, this is it, this is full, it's full. I don't need to be in the space where I call it good or bad, it's just full and it's real, it's authentic, it's life. That's the kind of good I'm talking about. And by whole, I don't mean that there is not an appearance of some sort of sickness or some sort of being different from other people or something that makes you feel like, that's not the way I want it. Whole, by whole, I mean that there is a blueprint in each of us, that is the divine pattern of who and whose we are. And that is complete, that we're not born into it being incomplete, that it is complete and we are of wholeness itself. And then the third is that the belief that God is everywhere present. The belief that there is no place God is not. That there is no more God in this sanctuary than there is when you are sitting on the side of a lake, gazing at the water, when you're kayaking down a river, when you're walking in the streets of Manhattan, when you're in the middle of your worst fight, when you've received a diagnosis, when something is going the way you don't think it should go, that God energy, the grand overall loving design of life, is always present everywhere in all of its force and capacity. So how can these three concepts become practices that transform our vibrational prayer? First of all, you might be asking yourself, what is vibrational prayer? It's nothing. I just made that word up. Vibrational prayer to me is the field that you're holding. It is the collection of your mind, body, spirit, your beliefs that are empowered by your emotional field that you're holding when you think, when you act, when you talk, when you pray. It's the prayer that's not about the words you speak, but it's about the deep belief that you have, the trust and the faith in the great allness, life itself. Just like if you cut your arm just a little somewhere, right? If you just got a little paper cut, you wouldn't wonder if it's going to heal, would you? You would just know it's going to heal. When we have beliefs that underlie everything, they become foundational. So how could knowing these things help? How could knowing these things help? I referenced last Sunday the Unity prayer song that says, our thoughts are prayers and we are always praying. How these beliefs help? Well, our beliefs have to do with consciousness. And prayer is all about consciousness. It's all about a state of mind. It's all about holding a state of mind. And in fact, science has shown, this is why science has shown prayer to be effective, because we know, even in medical science now, that how we show up to something makes a difference. That we can actually learn tools that can decrease anxiety, decrease stress, that can decrease medication. Medication is the tool to decrease medication. This got like a tongue twister. It's Kids Sunday. And we know that what we hold actually makes a difference. It actually changes things. So how can these three things transform our practice? Sig Paulson, Reverend Sig Paulson, in the book Our Power to Be, said this about beliefs. So think about these 3 core beliefs, and then what we practice about how our beliefs are foundational. He says, faith is put to work through a process called believing. Believing is much more than a mere intellectual assent to a truth or proposition, although this may well be the beginning. Believing is a consistent activity that keeps faith on the job until it has made an unseen reality substantial by giving it a mental, emotional, and physical body of expression. I'll read that again. Faith is put to work through a process called believing. Believing is much more than a mere intellectual assent to a truth or proposition, although this may well be the beginning. Believing is a consistent activity that keeps faith on the job until it has made an unseen reality substantial by giving it a mental, emotional, and physical body of expression. So these beliefs create a physical, mental, and emotional body of expression. It's through that body of expression that we activate our good, that we stand in it for ourselves or others. So the belief that we're born blessed. This is the belief that we have favor in the universe, different from the belief that we actually are not blessed, that we are actually always out of alignment with either God's will or with God's favor. When we come from the consciousness that we are born blessed, we begin to recognize that everything is sacred, that we should honor and show up to everything inside of ourselves and everything outside of ourselves as sacred. The earth, other people, other children, honoring practices and places where we haven't been or people we haven't met. But we become reverent about things. We begin to have a reverence around life because we know that we're born blessed. And when you don't have that opposite, you don't have that idea that there is something pulling from that, in the times when in the human condition we begin to wonder, we have something to fall back on that awakens our eyes to see differently. It's not the uphill battle of having to build your worth. Can you believe in the possibility that your worth has nothing to do with what you can undo? Your worth has nothing to do with what you can undo. When we come from the place of recognizing that we're born blessed, and if that's too much for you today, if you come from a different background, at least just start with neutral. Try that on. Can I believe that we're born neutral? Just try that on. Life becomes sacred. We become aware of blessings that we may not otherwise have been present to. We become aware of a new lens that's available to us. We're not looking for blessings to come from outside of ourselves and not looking for them always to happen to us, but we recognize that being born blessed, they're born from within us. And that becomes the lens through which we see and experience and co-create our reality. The next is that we're whole good. The idea that we cannot be broken. We cannot be out of favor, we cannot be broken. That nothing you can do can take the favor out. That in fact, that shifts the idea of redemption, that shifts the idea of being at war with what is, being at war with yourself, with your emotions, with your feelings, with your awareness, that all of those things, when they feel out of sync, are really part of the journey of unfolding. They're part of the journey of learning self-compassion or compassion for others. But they are not signs that you are flawed. They are simply part of the human condition, and we can enter into a state where we choose not to judge them, but instead of judging them, we can say, what is mine to do with this? What is the gift here? How do I unfold this so that I see this as a gift? When we do this, failures become opportunities, emotions become experiences, and error becomes awakening. Failures become opportunities, emotions become experiences, and error becomes awakening. The third idea, God is everywhere present. If we could fully know, whenever we are in a moment of prayer, that we don't need to send something to someone, that we don't need to ask for something to show up that has not shown up, that we're simply called to realize that it's already there, that changes and transforms prayer life. I have prayed with a lot of people, and we sometimes in this human condition have the concept that if someone is doing things that we don't like, or if someone's going through a rough time, if someone's struggling, or if someone has a different practice or a different belief or a different way than we do, that somehow God is not there. And there's this need to say well, they need God, so I'm going to pray that they get it. That this God that's with me comes to them. I'm sending my God over to them to do the things that I want it to do so that their life goes the way it should go, or so that their healing manifests the way I really want it to, whatever it is. But it's foundationally flawed because there's an idea that source is not already there, that the fullness of source is not already there. So how does that change our prayer life? What does that look like? So rather than me spending my energy hoping that my prayer or my God or whatever concept of prayer gets to you, my other concept of God is actually making it into your doorway, I am holding the space. I am knowing that right where you are in the midst of guidance. Right where you are in the midst of love. Right where you are in the midst of wisdom. That it's inside of you, it's all around you, it's looking at you through the eyes that are coming to you on the streets, wherever you are. Really, really, really get into that, of what that would look like if you had no belief that someone could be missing God. And how does that change the feeling? How does it change the vibration? How does it change your heart? To just go, oh, that's right. The allness, the love and the wisdom, it's right there with them, right? Your prayer changes from this human one of talking and asking for stuff, right? This human one of even visioning. And it just turns into this grounded or blissful or centered moment of just knowingness. You know that reading Footprints or Footsteps? Footprints, you know the one? I imagine everyone knows it. If you don't, just Google that word and it'll come up. It's all about, I was walking and I thought there was only one step of footprints, so I thought I was alone. But then you get that moment where the tears come that it's oh no, those were your hardest times. Why did you abandon me? I didn't abandon you. Those were the times that I carried you. That's why you see one set of footprints. Those were the times that I carried you. When we pray from that foundation, when we pray from that belief, it is a whole different experience. Because we are knowing that. The most powerful interactions that I have had with people in prayer, receiving prayer, have been one when someone made the complete space to validate my human experience, to just bring me in and go oh, of course you'd be feeling like this. Of course, to just really see me. And the second most powerful is when someone looks straight through that. All of the human condition, all of the messiness, all of the slop, all of the even things you could argue with, right? Well, that's not really how that happened. If you could only see it this way, you would actually realize you were the problem. Or, this follows you around because you create it, whatever it is. Or you're being a baby. The full acceptance. And the second thing that's been the most powerful for me is when people have looked through all of my human condition, all of my complaints, all of my weakness, all of my sickness, all of whatever it is that's going on for me, and said, I know you, and I know your strength, and you've got this. What I know is that the answer will come to you. What I know is that you're tuned into your wisdom. What I know, and just look straight through all the stuff and calls up my highest self, like just talks to it, just knows it so well. It's like a foundational belief, right? Knowing that I'm born blessed, knowing that I'm whole, that goodness is surrounding and wanting my expression to emerge. Knowing that God is everywhere present, right there with me. And those things somehow cleared all the stress and anxiety so I could be present to the process. So that whatever it was that I was going through, I could be grounded and rooted in the core of my being, not frantic, not fearful, but strengthened in a way that I could probably show up for anything. So what happens when we live in this trinity of beliefs? We begin to see through this lens. We begin to generate power and the power that's in these truths. And we begin to cultivate strength in each other. It has everything to do with prayer. It frees us up. It helps us forgive. It reminds us who we are. It strengthens us. It reassures us. And it brings back gratitude and peace. A powerful way to pray is to be grounded in the beliefs and look to the core of someone's being. And isn't that mostly what we need? Think about the times that you have been the most down. Think about the times that have been the hardest. Just breathe into that for a moment. And if you choose, you can close your eyes, but breathe into the times when you have felt the most devastated or the most separate, whatever it is. And then imagine someone or people being with you, knowing who you are, knowing that you are blessed, you are whole, and you are unified with a consciousness, in a consciousness, and as a consciousness that is wondrously filled with wisdom, with love, and with pure life itself. Take a moment to give that to yourself. To recognize in any time you may have faltered, to surround yourself, to remember that we have access to wisdom, we are never alone, and we are never abandoned. And come back to this moment. Think about how it would look if someone believed that, and if we could believe that for each other. These truths would no longer be impotent. They would be alive with power. That's what faith looks like. Charles Fillmore called faith the perceiving power of the mind, linked with the ability to shape substance, to transform. We are born blessed. And I leave you with 3 phrases. Anytime that your mind feels separate or feels the need for prayer for self or other. One is from my prayer practice. One is from Larry Dossey, who is one of the most known prayer researchers. He's a medical doctor, and he does a lot of research on the efficacy of prayer, how prayer really works. And the other one is Oprah Winfrey. So Oprah said her go-to prayer, her go-to phrase is always, direct my feet. Direct my feet. Larry Dossey's, let thy will be done. He would go into his office before he would do any procedures with people, meet with people, let thy will be done. And mine, for self or other, is your soul knows what to do. Namaste.